Welcome to Strange and Creepy, a podcast about strange and creepy experiences, mysteries, and the unexplained. I'm your host, Selinda Hart.
The year was 1944, and my three older brothers were in the army stationed in Europe during World War II. Being the youngest, I was too young to serve at the time, so I lived with my parents. Not too many teenagers had cars back then. I was used to walking a lot, to school, town, or wherever my mom and dad sent me to run errands. If I ever needed to travel pretty far, I'd simply take the bus. I was making a little bit of money and started to save for a car. What was my motivation? I wanted to start dating and be able to take girls to school dances. Borrowing my dad's car was not an option, especially since he needed it for work. One night, I lay in bed. Then I remembered there was a used car lot on Commerce Street not far from the malt house. It was a crisp October night, very late, around 2 in the morning, and there was hardly any cars driving on the normally busy street. I could usually hear cars driving by, especially when I had the window to my room open. I slipped out of the window of my bedroom without my dad finding out and crossed the main street and strolled to the used car lot to see what they were selling. There weren't too many lights on the lot, but I could make out the latest models even in the shadows. Thankfully, there was a big full moon that night, and by the light of the moon, I'd peek inside several cars to see the interiors and scope out the prices. The cars lined up at the front were usually the ones in better condition, but also the most expensive. Then, from the distance on the back row, I saw it. A black, shiny beauty. It was parked apart from the rest of the vehicles. They probably just got this one, I thought to myself. I made a beeline and walked towards the brand new looking Chevy. The moonlight gave the car an alluring sheen. I admired the car from all angles and even kicked a tire or two. When I saw the price on the car sitting on the base of the windshield, I couldn't believe it. It wasn't expensive at all. I could actually afford this one, and it didn't look like a used car. I patted the hood as if it was already mine and made a plan to go by the lot the following day. By now it was around 2:30 in the morning, and there weren't any cars passing by on Commerce Street. I knew I'd have to get home and sneak in as to not wake up my mom and dad. But I thought I'd give the car one last look. I peered inside the driver's side of the window, but couldn't see very well for some strange reason. There seemed to be a shadow in the front seat on the passenger side. I walked around the front of the car to get a closer look. I cupped my hands on the window. Gradually, the outline of a man's face began to appear right before me. Staring back at a close range were a pair of eyes. I fell back several feet, hitting the pavement. I was so startled. This was not my reflection, and after a few seconds, with my heart pounding out of my chest, I finally mustered the courage and slowly approached the car once again. My heart pounded so hard, and I forced myself to peer inside the window, but I could see that there was nothing. What had I just seen? The next day, in the light of day, I went to the lot and noticed the car was gone. "Hey, what happened to the black Chevy on the last row?" I asked Floyd, a mechanic at the lot. "You don't want that car." I insisted I had enough money and could pay for it with cash. He stared at me gravely. "Don't you know someone was killed in that car?" My heart almost stopped. What? He recounted a story that leaves me cold to this day. He said a few years earlier a man had been found dead, and his body was found in the passenger seat with his eyes wide open. The police found him on the side of the road a few miles out of town. They don't know what happened to him. He wasn't very old, but had died right there. They could never solve the mystery either. Funny thing too, no one has been able to keep the car for very long. Oh, there was always a customer. I mean, they'll buy it, and then just a few weeks or a month or so, the car is returned to the lot. I stared at Floyd and shook my head in disbelief. I've asked myself time and time again, did I see a ghost? That was many years ago when I had that awful experience, and the image of what I saw that night stayed with me all my life. I've never forgotten the ghostly passenger.
This personal account is by Rudy Reyna, presented to you by his grandson, Louie Hernandez. You've been listening to Strange and Creepy. I'm your host, Selinda Hart. If you would like to share a strange or creepy experience, send me an email at selindahart@gmail.com. Until next time.